Harry's Wife, Part 103.22. There's Harry. Spouting his wife's nonsense. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. We know that Harry's wife puppeteers Harry. And when he is allowed out on his own, it's invariably as an extension of his handler, Harry's wife. We've seen that a not particularly intelligent individual who basically enjoyed the simpler things in life, like getting butt naked when playing poker, down in the voddy and the beers, and hanging out with stripy cock, wanky trousers and chunderbucket, was part of all about growing up and being British. However, these days he's more likely to be found quaffing some green mixture in a cup that has been compiled for him by his controlling wife, and spouting nonsense about finding himself engaging in therapy and sitting and going, The things that made Harry tick, the things that he enjoyed, have been stripped away from him. Part of the way that the narcissist controls an individual. We, in essence, deconstruct you, removing you from familiar support networks, the things that you enjoy, making you become so dependent upon us as the sole and leading light in your life, that when we decide to extinguish that light, you are groping around in the dark, trying to find the light switch to turn on another light to find your way out of the mess that we have led you into. But we're certainly not going to help you achieve that. Harry has of late appeared to have gone missing, but as a consequence of extensive searching and waving a bottle of delicious, tasty Finlandia vodka around, he has emerged from the undergrowth. And according to Mail Online, an article tells us Harry's business advice. Duke of Sussex tells 700 CEOs they should individually grow themselves. A cunning plan, as Baldrick might have suggested to Blackadder back in the day. I see where the Duke of Sussex is going. To grow yourselves. He's telling the CEOs that you must clone yourselves. Presumably, if you clone yourself, the second version of you can handle some of the mundane stuff, leaving the original to get on with all the sexy stuff. That your clone can deal with the boring stuff like ironing your underpants and taking those mind-numbing calls, whilst allowing original self to get down to the sexy stuff of making deals and appearing on programs and enjoying bank. Brilliant. Great thinking there, Mr. Duke of Sussex. Presumably that's what he's talking about when he says that they should be individually growing themselves in order to scale up their companies. In a new clip from a San Francisco summit. Well, actually we all know when he's talking about the fact that they should individually grow themselves, it's more beige claptrap that he's become infected with, courtesy of his wife. Prince Harry told a room of 700 CEOs and business leaders that they should individually grow themselves in order to scale up their companies in a newly released clip of his speech at a San Francisco summit. The Duke of Sussex, 38, made a surprise appearance at the summit in San Francisco last week, where he spoke about the power of therapy and coaching, the day after Harry's wife's bombshell interview dropped. Harry appeared on a panel alongside Better Up founder Alexei Robichaud. Since last year, the royal has been working as chimp officer, or Chief Impact Officer, for the $4.7 billion mental health startup. In a video shared by Better Up today, the royal father of two can be heard on stage discussing mental health, telling the group of 700 CEOs, "We are at the point where we need to unlock that potential because of the state of the world and the number of unknowns. It is scary, especially if you've lost the blue crayon and need to draw some sky. I beg your pardon, it is scary, especially if you have children. Even if you don't have children, it's still pretty scary." Wow, brilliant insight from old Ginger Bollocks here. We have to do better, and the way to do that is to individually grow ourselves, but also for the people we're responsible for. Help them to grow as well. And if you're going to scale your company, scale yourself and scale your employees at the same time. This is the kind of nonsense that his wife comes out with Hello, I'm the CEO of Conquer Bollocks Inc. I'd like you to give me some really good advice. Thank you very much. Well, what you need to do is individually grow yourself and help other people that you're responsible for grow as well, and then to scale your company, scale yourself, and scale your employees at the same time. Yes, thank you, Your Royal Highness. But what the fuck does that actually mean? Can you give me some practical examples? Yeah, I grew myself because my wife made me go and stand in the garden in some compost. And then because I'm responsible for the parental trees, I had to water them also, and they started to grow. Right, but how does that help my business? Well, I'm demonstrating how I grew myself, and therefore I became a better person. How did you become a better person? My wife told me. You see, this is what you often get with these consultancies. This is what you often get with these people that make a living from telling you very little but saying quite a lot. It's all buzzwords and phrases which anybody, and I'm not a cynic in regard to this, I work on the evidence. They come up with all this beige claptrap, which is utterly meaningless. How does growing myself individually help my business? It doesn't. It just sounds good. How does growing the people I'm responsible for help my business? It doesn't. It just sounds good. And what the fuck does scaling your company, scaling yourself and scaling your employees at the same time mean, or indeed do? Fuck all. And it's clear that he's been spending so much time with her that he's become infected with the nonsense that she comes out with. He also said, I never, ever, ever thought I'd be sitting on this stage saying therapy is good and coaching will change your life, or both will change your life. The more people we can get that to, the better. Well, you're bound to be saying that because isn't that the nature of the business that you're signed up for as chimp officer? From a Better Up standpoint, the goal is the democratization of coaching to make sure we can get it to the masses. Okay, so how do you democratize coaching? You mean get more people to pay for it? That doesn't sound like democracy. In another clip released of the summit last week, he said, I think we are a product of our upbringing and what we're exposed to as young kids. Well, that is invariably correct. Of course, genetics play a part as well. The majority of us in this room, especially far as I'm concerned, 99.9% of people on planet Earth right now are dealing with some kind of unresolved grief, trauma or loss. Bollocks they are. You're telling me that nearly the entire population of the planet is dealing with unresolved grief, trauma or loss? Nonsense. And he carried on by saying, and most of that we suppress, society doesn't really encourage us to bring it to the surface. Again, this is the bilge that is spewed by his wife, and he's learned to parrot it. He carries on, but if we are not aware of that, we don't have the self-awareness of how we got to where we got to, why we react the way we do, our mood swings, our upbringing, what we saw, what we experienced, what happened to us, as opposed to what's wrong with us. Then we're part of the problem and not the solution. Gosh, how many times has that been said? I want to be the best leader I can be. I want to be the best boss I can be. Boss of who? Of what? You don't really do anything. I want to be the best father I can be, and I want to be the best friend and the best buddy to whoever wants to be my friend and my buddy. Well, that's all sensible sentiments about wanting to be a decent person. Okay. How about stop being a twat with your family? Start there. Elsewhere during the summit, he revealed how therapy opened his eyes. He said, I was moving through life thinking there was only one way to live, and therapy burst that bubble. Then when I found my way to coaching, the next bubble burst. And all of a sudden I realized that now I have perspective. Oh, who else uses that word, perspective? And a great understanding of my value. I regained confidence that I never thought I had. The Duke was joined by podcaster and entrepreneur Reid Hoffman, who interviewed them about how the brand encourages its users to achieve peak mental fitness. Well, how about that? Better Up encourages its users to achieve peak mental fitness. On Twitter, Better Up's official Twitter account stated, BetterUp CEO Alexei and Reid Hoffman are about to take the stage at the Masters of Scale Summit to discuss why leaders need to focus on their mental fitness. Any guesses who might be joining them for a surprise appearance? Once their panel had finished, Prince Harry then took time to chat with guests at the conference, which operates on an invite-only basis. Posting a photo with the Duke on Twitter, Axios' Chief People Officer Dominique Taylor gushed, "Impossible to pick one fave from an epic first day at the Masters of Scale Summit, so here's two. 1. Ariana Huff declaring HR leaders are now the most important execs in a company." Ooh, the hardly relevant department, huh? And 2, talking to Prince Harry about the power of BetterUp's therapy and coaching. The Duke spoke candidly about his mental health journey and treatment in candid interviews with Oprah Winfrey for a 5-part Apple TV Plus series, The Me You Can't See. And the Mail goes on about that. And it talks about how, after an argument with Harry's wife, he was then committed to fixing the issues he had repressed in the years since his mother's death. "I knew that if I didn't do the therapy and fix myself, that I was going to lose this woman who I could see myself spending the rest of my life with." In other words, she basically said, "Get thee to therapy or else," use of threat. And then there's more nonsense about his wife. Now, interestingly, there he is running around, talking on behalf of BetterUp, making an appearance at once. Of course, his handler must have allowed him out for the day. And BetterUp apparently ensures that people ensure peak mental fitness. Well, it's interesting, because I wonder what their employees think about that. Because, of course, on Glassdoor.com, BetterUp's been getting a bit of a shoeing, as we Brits would say. That there are a variety of reviews, some naturally favourable, although, of course, as you know, with many things, it's the unfavourable reviews that often give you a more accurate view of what's going on. There is a 3-star review from a senior account executive who explains, "Onboarding does little to nothing in terms of preparing you for this role. It emphasises the science of the solution, which is a tiny portion of winning a sale. The metrics and quota are daunting, and the metrics shift depending on one quarter and make or miss. Often without a word from leadership. Very complex sale, and due to pending IPO, pressure to close deals before it makes sense is beginning to loom large. Pretty sure there is tracking software and leadership spying on activities and computer time logged. Unfortunately, the loudly stated values are meaningless in the face of cold, hard capitalism. Not walking the walk by any means. Too bad." Another one, a 2-star review. Cons. "It's unfortunate the list of cons grew so extensively. The company has the makeup of something tremendous. I was really excited to be part of this mission. But they are pushing so hard towards growth goals, there's just a lot of collateral damage. They force-feed you culture. It's almost cult-like. People use their high-impact behaviours in daily vocabulary, which is weird. I understand the purpose, but it's just too much. And you have to love to read, like a lot of books. They have all the tools for transparency and open communication and a culture of feedback, but can't take it themselves. I think this is for the purpose of monitoring their employees. They have way too much process for a company of this size. They hire exceptional talent but don't listen to experienced teams to make actionable changes. The management at every single level is there for the company and does not protect their team members. The responsibility of underperformance will always be on the salesperson, so if you're looking for a sales role, beware. They weaponize their values. I read elsewhere that it's not uncommon for someone to be let go because of a scarcity mindset or lack of a growth mindset. Which was 100% in my case too. It felt abusive and completely disintegrated my trust with anyone in a leadership role. 1 star. Run away. Not what it appears. Poor mid-level readership do not live up to their stated values, self-destructing. Advice to management, unlikely they will listen to anyone not drinking the Kool-Aid. Another 1 star. Dysfunctional. Medical benefits are shoddy in terms of coverage. Leadership is poor. I could write a book, but I'll spare you and give a short list. Lots of thoughts, but zero pragmatics or enablement. It's disjointed as an organisation. No one seems to be orchestrating. The literal definition of dysfunctional reactive. Positive psychology weaponized for corporate greed. I have seen folks put in situations, told that failure is okay and that we learn from it, only to then be told failure isn't an option and have their input dismissed as playing the victim. Your first month is drinking positive psych and company culture Kool-Aid, while constantly being told to spend literal hours searching a disorganized and out-of-date internal wiki for answers, only to find they don't even answer your question, and then have to advocate for yourself when you've still got to ask someone for help. Zero training on the like 200 tools the company pours money into, hoping it will make us efficient and wondering why they aren't working. Another one, 3 stars, unrealistic quota expectation and no BDR support. Quota expectations are incredibly unrealistic. Per seat cost is very expensive for a product that is not budgeted line item at enterprise organizations. 1 star, racism cleverly executed. Stay away. Covert racism is rampant. They will not hire minorities, but instead bring them on as contractors to complete work. They then dismiss them without notice. In fact, they tell them it's contract to perm, but they never actually intend to convey them. Poor saps, because they are working hard and trying to demonstrate investment in better up, not knowing it will not happen. Oh dear. 1 star, hypocrite HQ, absolute hierarchy, distrust and dishonesty among executive leadership, hypocritical behaviour by leadership. Not looking too clever for an organisation that prides itself on telling how everybody else should behave in the workplace. 1 star, amazing concept, horrid place to work. Bullying of middle management, for me it's the right thing to bring this up as I watch several peers be bullied and treated unfairly. Unfair treatment, absolute favouritism and people held to different standards among peers. One thing is expected of one person but not another in the same role. Psychologically unsafe place to work. Everyone is uncomfortable and living in fear. On it goes. There are, of course, favourable reviews, and it's a point of balance to make that point obvious. 2 star, sinking ship. Cons, too many to list. Run. 2 star, many pros but abusive CTO. Ryan Sonek, CTO and current head of R&D, is psychologically abusive. He's not straightforward with what he wants, then blows up at people when they can't understand his cryptic communication. He never apologises and appears cheerful. It's like gaslighting. It's affecting a lot of people's mental health across several teams and creating bottlenecks. Just a selection of some of the reviews that can be found on Glassdoor.com about Better Up. So it's rather interesting that Harry has allied himself to an organisation and is preaching its values, which it doesn't seem to be living itself. Interesting. And do we know anybody else who behaves that way? I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.